Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Reinventing Beauty podcast. Today, we're going to talk about education, the importance of it, and how it can change your life.
And we are joined today by one of our dear friends. Her name is Margaret McDonald, and I'm going to cheat and look at her title here. She is the Davines International Technical Education Manager, also an education geek and passionate colorist.
We're so honored to have you here with us today. Margaret, tell us a little bit about yourself and what your journey's been.
Okay, I am absolutely delighted to be here because, as you say, I am a total education geek and I have a real passion and a belief that anybody can take part in education and education can completely change lives. However, I'm exactly the same as everybody who's listening in. I'm a hairdresser. I started as an apprentice, in the good old days in the 80s where we were scrubbing the edges of the floors with toothbrushes and everything else, real good old fashioned apprenticeship. And I think once again, starting in the olden days where I came from a very traditional educational background, it didn't work for me. When I was young, I loved school. It was exciting. It was fun. I was learning all sorts of new things. And then when I got into high school, it really didn't fit. The teachers, didn't really excite me. I had to sit in a box and do sort of lots of things for exams. And it didn't really sort of spark my creativity. So I ended up in hairdressing, which sounds an awful thing to do because it wasn't necessarily my career of choice. However, once I fell into it, I found this incredible creative world where you were allowed to explore and do things in very, very different ways. And then as time progressed, I wanted to develop. I wanted to get further. And I suddenly found I had to go back to school and learn more things, which for me was a real dread. I had this real mental block about education and I started to dip my toe into it. And then I started to sort of find out different things about education. And rolling on further, I then had children. And my children were dyslexic and they were having the same problems I was having at school and everything else. So I started once again getting further and further into education and really found that the world of education and hairdressing at that point probably weren't working that well. And it became a real passion of mine to re-explore different ways of learning and really bring that to the world of hairdressing, because I think many of us in hairdressing are actually career-driven individuals who want to progress and want to get further, but sometimes have a block on education. So as you can tell, I'm passionate about education and I will go on for hours about it. So please jump in and stop me when I go too far.
No, it's actually amazing. It's fascinating to listen to you speak about it because I think so many people in our industry, so many stylists, so many salon owners, we've all come from that. A lot of us have come from that same space. It's interesting to me when I meet like an incredibly book smart hairstylist, I'm always so enamored by them. I'm like, how can you memorize all of that? And how do you know every ingredient, every technical piece of whatever. And that's never been my strong suit. The two of us do pretty good together in that way because Charles may be a little stronger in that area. And then for me, it was always entrepreneurship and creativeness. And I also had children that really had some struggles in school. And it was such a frustration because, as you said, we try to make people fit into this box that just doesn't really serve those individuals. And we lose the weight of so many gifts they have to bring to the table when we try to make this box all fit perfectly for every individual. So I love it.
No, and I think one of the things that really happens with education is they really do try to put people in boxes. And if you don't fit in the box or the perfect mold, you're almost thrown out onto the scrap heap. And the incredible thing I have found in my long career in hairdressing is you never, ever know what somebody can do until you give them the opportunity. There are so many people in our industry in very high positions, in very creative positions, on stage, on screen, all over the place, who once again left school with no qualifications. And, I think we sometimes carry this little chip on our shoulder sometimes that maybe we're not as good as the people who have gone to university, or we're missing or something else. And it's not true. It's a failing of the state, and it's a failing of our education system not to be able to give us the education to take us further forward, because, as I say, it's there. And as you go in sort of nowadays with education, particularly with adults, it has to be very different because, you guys know, and I'm sure everybody listening to this knows, we have careers, we have families, we have lives, we have, whether it's our families, other people's families, we have all of these other commitments that we have to do. And we don't want to just go and sit in a lecture of something that's not relevant or pertinent or interesting to us, or taught in a way that we can actually take away what we need to know to make it useful for us as well. So we really have to evolve our way of educating and our way of developing to make it very relevant for the people that are sat in front of us. And as soon as you do that, you can literally see the sparks. You can see people suddenly getting so excited, or even so much confidence coming back that they actually can do it and they can progress further. And that's absolutely one of the most incredible things about education.
Yeah, we see that a lot in not only in the classes that we teach, but our employees with our staff. As soon as they start to learn something new, or at least they get the confidence to accept to learn something new, then it's a different journey for them at that point.
I was just going to say, I think it's fascinating to be able for Charles and I to work in education with Davines, and really, because you're globally the person, we see that. And it was such a reflection in the last update that we had, that this new style of educating is really becoming something that, at least for Davines, we're really encompassing. And I feel that it allows all of the educators that are there receiving the update the creative freedom. And there's a lot of conversation about, yes, we need to technically know how things are going to work, but also we want to see you evolve and make things your own with regard to the technicalities of things.
And even like they're touching on all the different routes that people learn,
Different learning
styles. Different learning styles, exactly, yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool, this last round for sure.
No, definitely. And it's not even just about the learning styles. You need to make sure that people can access education. So, once again, you may be, like I was saying when we joined, I live in the middle of the countryside, in the middle of nowhere. It's not easy for me to go and drive 2, 3, 4 hours just to learn something small. I need to be able to access it. And once again, if you have small children, you've got parents to look after, you've got your pets or any other commitments, and you're at work all day, you can't do the traditional 9 to 5, go and sit in a classroom and turn up at college. You need to be able to access it in the evenings. You need to access it when you're on the bus going to work, or it might be like you guys are doing the podcast where you can listen to the information as you're driving to work. So we have to think about many, many different ways of accessibility. And the other thing we need to do is, it doesn't matter if you repeat the information. Sometimes people get very protective from it. Oh no, we've already done that here and we can't put it here. We can't do it here. Once again, you can have little bits in multiple places, because the more you hear it, the more it goes in. But also, if it gets too repetitive, you'll either fast forward it, if it's a video or an audio or something else, you'll jump it, or you'll just zone out and think about the drive to work until something suddenly, jams you again. So the accessibility of education is absolutely massive. And when people get into it, and as I say, this confidence is one of the biggest things that we can give anybody. And once they start to get that confidence, you find that people then start to search. They start to maybe commit to do a little bit more, go a little bit further, because they suddenly realize, the importance of being able to do that. A friend of mine who's one of my mentors is actually a guy from the States. He's called John Bergman, and he's the leader of what's called Flipped Classroom. Which is a big thing sort of in some of the schools, etc. It's something we are also taking into hairdressing education. He was saying to me, if you can be replaced by a YouTube video, you should be, because you're not actually training any etc. And that's quite radical, because you're like, whoa, there's all these videos that, are competing with me. But actually, if you can be replaced by a YouTube video, you're not actually bringing any extra benefit, into it. And it really makes us think about what is important. What do people need to learn? What can I bring that's going to be very, very unique? What can Davines bring? What can the other brands that are unique to them? And how can they bring that to life as well? So, as I say, the mindset around education is really changing nowadays.
I think it's fascinating that you just said that. Charles and I had a similar experience in a salon that we were in this summer. It was a salon that went through a conversion, and we went in to help their stylists get acclimated to the new color line. And we worked with their clients. We made a big event out of it. But what we found by the time we left, we spent 2 days with them, is we felt that we overwhelmed the owner with information that she then didn't have a way to take further and execute. She wanted to know everything we were doing to make our business successful. And but that was a journey that's taken 24 years. And so to share it over 2 days, I felt like we kind of like vomited on her and then had to leave. And when we got in the car to head to the airport, I said, we have to find a better way to bring this information to people in their own homes, in a space where she's not trying to do her clients, teach her staff a new color line, make sure everybody's happy, doing all the things, and then wanting information on a pay structure or software we use, or, so it is a pretty amazing resource that we can do a YouTube video, or we can do, like you said, a podcast, or we just created our first online course. So to be able to do stuff like that you can say, hey, you can work at this at your own pace, and then maybe we can hop on a call while we're all in our kitchens, and make it a little more accessible. And then, yes, get to also be in person. I love the direction education has gone really since COVID.
Yeah, it's a big thing. I mean, we sort of got really to digital education, and people are saying digital education's gone. Everybody wants to be, back face to face. However, we also need to look at, as I say, when do we need to be face to face? If you're physically doing something new, we can watch a cutting video, we can learn the basics, but somebody sometimes needs to be there just to lick the angle or change the scissors. That's the bit that you make the difference on. And that's the bits that you physically need to do. But by preparing people beforehand and making sure they've got these multi-touch points and that they can go into, makes a big difference. And it also makes a huge difference on the flip side, because once again, if you start to look at the psychology, and as I was saying, many of us didn't finish high school, we didn't have the best experience. So we have a bit of a fear of going, even me, I've been around education all my life, but to go into a classroom and maybe feel that I'm not good enough, or that I don't know enough, or, I'm not up to it, to be able to go in and prepare yourself beforehand and make sure that you feel confident as you're walking in the room, and you feel you've got the right tools or the right knowledge, and you're not going to sit there looking dumb, can really help to bring and encourage people to come in and stay, because then they're not sitting there with that fear of oh my goodness, I hate this place and I feel so dumb.
I don't know anything. I went to classes like that, and I would come home and be like, I don't even know why I do hair. I should stop. But I don't know anything. It's terrible, So, yeah.
And that doesn't encourage anything, because once again, one of the things that we really have, we've done quite a lot of research. We've spoken to people. We spent a long time really sort of developing where we want to go. And, you're only seeing sort of the scratching. We're just really starting. It's one of these things that takes such a long time to develop and come through to the, the grassroots, etc., where we're at. But there was, sort of 3 areas or 4 areas where stylists particularly, wanted, or not necessarily knew they wanted from education, but they wanted to build their confidence. They wanted the confidence to, feel confident in their sound, feel that they're worth the money that they're charging. They wanted to know ways to grow their business, which was, also really important, because they're in business, they need to be able to grow their earnings. And they wanted the ability to not only change their work life, but to change their home life, so that the educational, the skills that they learned can step outside of the salon, if that makes sense, and can come into other areas of their life. By growing, for me, the biggest one's growing confidence, because if you grow your confidence, whether it's through product knowledge, your self-worth, your personal branding, all of these things, you suddenly feel that you're able to charge more.
Right.
But you're all recommend anymore. You've got more services, you've got more tools in your tool belt to be able to offer. And I know after, people who have done education, on some cases, they'd actually grown their column growth, and it's terrified, but it's unbelievable, by 27%.
That's crazy.
No.
It's so empowering. It's just a very empowering thing.
I've got a bottle of shampoo here, and if I gave you this bottle of shampoo and it's going to grow your column growth by 27%, everyone would be eyeing it off the shelves,
Right.
Where we have education all around, and people are afraid to take it. And it's there. Most of the time it's free, or, accessible, or different things. And it could really change their lives that much. And it can make such a difference.
And a lot of times I think people that are hesitant to take a class, I think you said it earlier, was, I'm not good enough to even take this class. And it's like, you have to put your best foot forward. And Nicole was talking about the owner that we felt like we overwhelmed her. It's like, what is the next best step? What is the next best step I can take to further my career, or take the next leap into whatever journey I'm going to be?
One of the other things that surprising enough, and it is surprising and it's not surprising, that stylists, colorists, etc., were really looking for, was peer approval.
Oh, so
They
much.
wanted to be recognized by their peers, the other stylists in the salon, for their knowledge, their growth. They wanted to be, the person that people came and asked questions to, or the other stylists trusted them. And I thought that was a really interesting finding in it, that it wasn't just the clients, it wasn't just, other people, but they actually really wanted to be approved of and respected by their peers as well, which, I mean, you guys having, big salon, you probably see that a lot.
I was just going to say that it's not something that I've ever really thought of in that exact saying, but it's very true. Our staff really seeks the approval of each other almost more anymore than they seek our approval. And it's kind of a piece of that culture that has made such a beautiful cohesiveness among our team, because when they start to feel like, yes, I have gotten the approval of my team, or my team recognizes that I'm really good at certain things, it's unbelievable what happens to them behind the chair. So as an owner, it's been a great thing for us to look at each one individually and try and empower them with the skill sets that, where we do see them thrive, it's like, hey, they could take that to their team. And it's been really interesting to, one, be empowered by the fact that we don't have to do all the education. They actually do better when someone else is bringing them, some education. And then also we can rely on our team to inspire each other as well.
Definitely. And once again, this idea of being able to, educate and share, also that confidence building that comes from having that extra knowledge, that extra thing, and that peer growth, and then being able to share it back and watch your team develop, or your, colleagues develop, or your juniors develop, is once again incredibly empowering to the way that, people mentally see themselves. And you, as you say, you can see them being elevated.
Yes. Their posture changes. You know, they sit differently, they walk differently, they enter the salon for the day in a completely different frame of mind and fashion, really.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's, once again, things like ambassadors, salon experts, all of these things are great programs to empower that and bring people on to develop those just in that small circle, that peer approval, that peer recognition, and that peer respect. And it's, as I say, it doesn't have to be a degree. It doesn't have to be, the color genius or the
Right.
top level education. It can just be really understanding a product or a technique really, really well. And it makes you want to get the next step, the next step, the next step. And it's the old adage saying of how do we eat an elephant, in little bites, not by trying to eat the whole thing. And I think when we're looking at adult education, this is where it's really, really important because it's not too much. It's empowering and it's really helping them to grow. And it's also relevant, and that makes such a difference.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, that's what it's about. The next ones have to grow, right? So we have to encourage any of the young stylists or any of the young educators to keep at it, or just take that next step because we have to continue growing new education.
Are there certain things that you really encourage? So if you were speaking to somebody that's trying to grow in education, what advice would you give them as they go on this journey and kind of whether it's how to build their confidence or what kind of things can they bring to a salon environment that they're going to teach him? What kind of advice would you give to a new educator?
I think one of the big things is be really open, and sometimes it's a little bit of this confidence thing and coming in and not feeling that you should be there, that you're there, etc. So be really, really open. Be open to learn old things and be open to learn new things, because often going back to the basics is really important. Sometimes we want to show that we know everything, and it's a bit like what you're saying. It's a waterfall over everybody, and somebody just needed a little drink. So making sure that you really tailor what you're doing to that person, and you're making sure you're not just wanting to stand there and look good,
Right.
and you're going for your own ego rather than for the other person, and that's really, really important. There's a great thing, and we do a crazy, as you've seen them from some of my exercise, we do a crazy exercise with just tapping and music, and it's about the curse of knowledge, because once you know something, you can never go back to unknowing it. And you literally are tapping songs, and the other person has to guess. All they hear is tapping, but in your head, because you know the song, you're singing New York, New York, or Happy Birthday.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely crazy. And the other person's looking at you and you're like, how do you not hear this? So this idea of, once again, really making sure that you tailor what you need to do for the person sat in front of you is really important. And know your fundamental knowledge, because as you were saying, we now encourage individuality. Everybody's different. We are all different. Our personalities, are different. And as long as you've got the same information, how you bring it to life and how you alter it for the person in front of you is what's going to make you a great educator.
That's amazing. I don't think it's been a secret to either of us that we've had some incredibly strong leadership. But now after this conversation, I feel even more enamored by what you do. And I'm so incredibly grateful to have been on this journey and to have such strong leadership leading us, because it's a big job taking on all these educators. And it's a large responsibility to not only the brand, not only to Davines, but to our industry as a whole. If we want to see it continue to grow, and it needs to evolve, I'd love to have all the time. We have, girls or stylists that'll come in and say, oh, I said I wanted to be a hairstylist, but my parents said I had to go to college first or had to finish my university first. It would be lovely to continue to see us evolve in a way that's not the conversation,
I totally agree. And it hurts me all of the time when I hear people saying, oh, I'm just a hairdresser.
Yeah.
I'm just a hairdresser. And it's like, guy, no, you're not. You can be anything. As I say, I left school with, I didn't finish high school in the traditional sense. And, I'm now heading up for global education for Davines. Amazing. You don't have to finish, high school, but you need to work hard along the way, and you need to know and recognize what you need to do, and you need to be open to go back and take those challenges.
Yeah.
But, just a hairdresser is nothing. We are one of the most incredibly, we actually physically touch people. We step into their space. We share their lives. We share their ups. We share their downs. And we take them on a transformation. And, we really can change our lives as well through development and growth. So yeah, never just a hairdresser.
Yeah.
Margaret, thank you so much. It's been a great day. There is one more question that we ask all of our podcast guests, and whether it's stylists or educators or whoever it is, how do you leave this place better than you found it?
How do I leave this space better than I found it? For me, it truly is through education. As I say, I am an education geek. So I think by positively touching everybody I possibly can, and ensuring that every single person knows that they've got the possibility to grow and develop and be the best that they want to be, not the best that I want them to be, the best that they want to be. I think that is the way that you can move forward and people can grow. So yeah, always education.
Thank you so much. We had a great time.
Yeah.
I'm so happy this worked. And I look forward to doing it again. So we appreciate you.
I'm so love it. And thank you very much for inviting me. I hope I didn't talk too much.
No,
Absolutely not.
it was wonderful. It was such an honor to have you.
All right, guys. So with that being said, we will see you on the next conversation.
Bye now.